So thanks so much, Isaline, for coming on. I know like you're expert in the multilingual SEO space in the Swiss market. Very keen to hear more about that. But I'll let you introduce yourself a little bit more as well, and then we can definitely get right straight into it.
Thanks for inviting me. I saw that you contacted a couple of people from the Women in Tech community. It was a really nice way, to get to know more people. I suppose like away from where you live.
Yeah, there's not too many like Australians in that Women in Tech SEO group, but it's so good to get connected to more people around the world and hear their perspectives. It's all really different as well.
Yeah, I haven't seen many Australian. I suppose maybe because of the hours. I don't know.
I think they're mostly based in Europe, like in London was like the base where the founder started it as well.
Yeah, indeed. There are lots of people from the US, I think, and since the community originally was created in the UK with a Reach network, there's definitely lots of people from the UK. But yeah, so I'm based in Lausanne, Switzerland. It's a small city between a lake and some mountains. I'm right at the border with France, which means that it's the French-speaking part of Switzerland, which represents around a little bit less of 20% of Switzerland. So we are definitely in minority, even though France is right next to. So most of the websites I've worked on since I've started working, they were always multilingual because most of them are, and unless you are a very small restaurant or very small company that's meant only for this part of the market, most of the website they're translated at least in German or in English, and sometimes both. So like the multilingual elements of the website has been always there, and also the multilingual, like on a technical aspect, of course, but also on content aspects, like how do you deal with translations and all of this type of things.
Yeah, I'm very keen.
Even if it's not a website, dealing with translation is a constant in Switzerland for any type of document. So we are very much into this type of challenges. So
would it be German, English, and French?
Yeah, mostly. We forget the Italian part, unfortunately. I have to say, like I speak German and English, but I don't speak and French, of course, but I don't speak Italian. Like I can understand little bits, but I couldn't do a keyword research very well in Italian.
So how do you do your keyword research, like for languages where you might not know the language or you're not as fluent? Would you go with like the translation, or would you get someone local to do it?
So I only work with language that I speak, or at least partially, which makes things lots of easier. Usually what I do for all clients, they have to choose what's their priority market, because the first language, when you think in a language, you're going to organize the content in a way that is suitable for the people. Like, for instance, the Swiss Germans, they like to start with details and get to the point. Whereas we would like to have the point of the story, like of the blog post, what you're trying to explain, and then get the details. So the first language is always the better, whatever language it is. So all of my clients, they have to choose, like, what is your priority market? And then we start from there, and we would start doing the keyword research and organize the content, like having hints from the other markets, but really focusing on one. And then you do the keyword research, organize the thing in the first language, and you adapt for the second. And there I say adapt because I don't say translate. They can be really good translations for legal documents, like anything that comes from the government, like we use translations, but for websites, anything that's interactive language, it's going to be better to have a copywriter work on the language and not aim at having a great translation, but aiming at having an enjoyable user experience, like having someone having fun reading the content and changing the examples, of course, because when you have examples that are based, like I have been working on a website for the automotive industry, and we talk about the charging station for the electric vehicle. And when you have the example of the charging stations based somewhere in Swiss German countryside that you don't know of course, you need to change these examples to make them relevant to the language, like to the place where the language is spoken. So it's more of a copywriting effort and providing what the users actually need and answering this search intent than trying to have the best ever, like most trustworthy translation.
100% agree with that. Like, I guess someone local, when it's like their first language, they're going to pick up on things really easily. And then once they see that, they tap out. Yeah. I was wondering as well, like, have you tested like AI translations at all? And like, what was your experience that?
So realistically speaking, it's impossible to have copywriters work on all pages, because in terms of resources, at some points you have to choose what is most important. So of course, we do sometimes some automatic translations, but with the plan to update them and optimize them later. So we don't do translations with copywriters for the whole website at first. We are going to prioritize the pages in terms of what's most important. Usually the most important pages, of course, they're the homepage and the what I call evergreen content. So anything that is, if it's a lead generation website, that is relevant to the service, and that is the contacts page, of course. And then we move on to anything that's relevant to the brand and the user experience, but user experience in meaning using the product or the service. So the FAQ page are very important. I know they're not traffic worthy most of the time in terms of SEO, but for user experience, if you have really bad FAQ, it feels like you don't really care for your clients and customers. So we tend to place them, like to work at them before something that would be the blog. And then on the blog, usually we prioritize like what's the most important service. Let's say there's a company, they have like 3 or 4 different service and different pillar pages with selection of article for each services to reach the beginning of the marketing funnel. Like start with the most important service or the most relevant for the region, or the one you really, really want to sell at the moment or something like that. So really it's about prioritizing the content and also the content of the architecture. Anything that's interactive, like buttons, it's better to have a copywriter, because you know when you do translation with translators, you're going to export all of the content in a text document, and the person is not going to know, this is a button, this is a link, this is like, what is this? So sometimes the interaction is completely forgotten, and there are lots of in English and in German, there are lots of words which could be a verb or which could be a noun. And typically, if this gets translated as a noun on a button, you lose completely this idea of interaction, like search, for instance.
Definitely agree with that. Like people often like underestimate like how your content's going to fit onto the actual page, like when people actually get interacting with it. Yeah, so important. what else have you seen with like multilingual SEO and like any top strategies and like key challenges maybe?
I think the worst is when, and this happens, I have lots of clients come to me because they're based in Swiss Germany, and they're like, oh, but the French speaking markets, it's the same legally, the same market. So it seems easier to reach. And they're like, oh, then I just quickly translate and it's going to be easy. And they have maybe a website in French living for a while already, but not converting so well. And actually, when you look at it, there's a big mess with URL. In French, we have accents. And if you take like title tags of the pages, translate that go automatically into slugs, that makes a big mess of URL with special characters and such. So that's one of the small things, sort of, that gets easily forgotten, but then which is later in time more complicated to fix, because there's always this balance. Oh, is it worth changing the URL because Google knows the URL?
Sounds familiar. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the also something that often happens when migrating. Like they relaunch the websites, and they do the redirects for the German parts or the main language, and they completely forget, oh, but it's true. We didn't check the other. and they forget the redirect for the French pages. So that's very often the case, and which I'm like, but if you do one thing for one part of the website, how could you forget to do the thing for the second part?
Have you seen like with href lag and stuff be quite a common issue, a challenge as well?
For smaller websites with only 2 languages, I'm not so big on hreflang tags, because Google can recognize the language. And if it's like, sometimes I'm like, yeah, let's not bother, especially if the dev team is kind of beginner with the with the SEO, all of the text aspect of SEO. hreflang tag, I don't add it as like a basic thing you have to do for any website. I'd say that for a lead generation website with a small blog with 2 languages, hreflang tags are okay. If it's 2 languages, like, not Swiss German and German, or UK English and US English, but really 2 different like French and German, for instance. But otherwise, yeah, that's hreflang tags. Unfortunately, it never works on the first try. I don't know why. Is it something you also like?
It's a
You
common
also
issue.
deal with a lot?
Or a lot of the times you'd be surprised by a lot of clients that haven't even implemented hreflang at all for like sites where they've got, they could be like in 10 to 20 countries or something. Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine with the like US English and Australian English, it's really like a necessity.
And sometimes you'll see like the US results, like if maybe like Australian website hasn't really answered the question well, then a US site could be quite authoritative and you'll see them ranking for the terms as well in Australia. Is that something you see as well with the different markets?
Yeah, definitely. We have lots of websites from France ranking in search results in French in Switzerland, and same search like German websites in the search results in Swiss German part of Switzerland. Also, because the markets in France and Germany, they're bigger and they sort of more competitive. Company tends to have like a SEO strategy from start and really, try to reach for the featured snippets and this type of thing. Whereas in Switzerland, SEO is not yet a part of the typical marketing mix. It tends to come later. Like after a while, they're like, oh, I'm doing social media and I'm doing advertisements, like paid advertisements, but actually I don't have that much traffic. I wonder why that is. And at that point, they're going to think, oh yeah, but there is this new thing called SEO, and they're going to start. And at this point, for frequent research, you would have already French, like really French websites in the search result. So yeah, definitely this happens a lot.
So it sounds like the market could be potentially less competitive in the SERPs, like.
Yeah, I think for someone who starts, it usually works well. I mean, not on all topics, like automotive industry, it's definitely a topic where there has been lots of investment in SEO already. And even in Switzerland, I mean, it's hard, or anything that's related to buying houses, renting houses. This is really competitive. But other topic like B2B markets, it's awesome. You really have results really fast, because you don't have that, like at the moment you start doing something right and cleaning your website and optimizing, you get results fast. So it's very satisfying.
Yeah, definitely. That sounds great, actually, because I think here in Australia, like a lot of things are getting more competitive. Yeah. And like how difficult is it to get like is it hard to get like a local backlink and that kind of thing? Like with like Swiss domains?
I don't specialize in backlinks. So this, like, the interesting thing is that in the UK, there's a role, a job that is called digital PR.
Yeah.
And here it just doesn't exist. Like this job, nobody says I'm a digital PR. And also so nobody does that job also. So, and when I see a client, I'm like, oh wow, yes, this client, like his brand name just doesn't populate even the first page of the search. Like little bit of PR would be good. Just to have positive image. And I collaborate with like a PR, sort of traditional PR, and I had to explain, okay, so what we're looking for here is not like paper article, but what I'm interested in is an article on the web. And there is still this idea that the paper article is the most important, and he's the one who is going to have the biggest reach. And it was kind of surprising to her. Oh, you want a link? Like, why? I think there is, on that side, there is a lot of potential. Definitely, just, to have someone who says, hey, I'm a digital PR, and that's.
It sounds like there could be a lot of opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah. There are lots of, it's interesting. There are lots of job opportunity, but also lots of education. Typically, you would need to, except for the big companies who would have someone like someone internal, head of marketing, or really in charge of the marketing. When you collaborate with smaller companies and you talk directly to the CEO, there's lots of education to do, to explain, okay, why are we doing this? Why is it long term? Why do you have to wait the results? What's the difference between SEA and SEO?
And whatever you've seen is like the best way to, get people on board with SEO, and like, would it be having like kind of very small incremental wins and just showing like how things are going along positively, and then that's when you can kind of get more buy-in, bigger things.
Usually the easiest for any company who tries to reach people locally is to start with them with Google Business and like do something very small with Google Business, help them get reviews and optimize that tool. And then after a couple of months, they're like, oh yes, you can move on to the website. I can see it's bringing results also because Google Business is really easy to track if someone's calling, for instance. So you have a very direct impact on sometimes on the sales, but at least on the people contacting the company. And after a while, when they see that it works well, they're like, okay, yes, you can audit my website.
I think just like, the quick wins wherever you can find them. Yeah. And like with the Swiss SEO market, we were curious as well, like, is like Google like the main search engine for you guys?
Yes. Okay. Yes,
and
it
Google
is.
Maps is pretty popular as well? Or would there be like other platforms that kind of dominate as well, like with reviews and stuff?
They are sort of local Google Maps, or maybe not maps, but more annuaire, what's it called? Place where you have all the numbers and the addresses, but not the map.
Which one was that?
Like a website where you an annuaire. I'm just looking for the words.
Yeah.
An annuaire is like a website where you have all of the addresses and phone numbers, but you don't have the maps,
Like yellow pages or something.
Yeah, something like that. So we have some other yellow pages. They rank well, but they are very expensive for the companies. So they charge they charge yearly the company to have their numbers on the website. And for small business, it's more interesting. It's sometimes easy to convince them to try with Google Business, because then it's cheaper from the start because they don't have to pay for the tool. So there is some competitive places, but usually when I start with the clients, I'm like, okay, you can stop paying for these websites. You don't need them.
I mean, make use of the tools already like inbuilt in Google first. Yeah.
But we wouldn't use anything like, I think in the US, there are lots of other platforms with reviews and
like Yelp and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, but it just doesn't exist here. So.
Do you like use any other tools like for multilingual SEO that you recommend?
I use the basic like Href and Screaming Frogs, and it's what helps. It helps most, I think, to have separate reporting. Like the tools are the same, but to check the results, of course, it's better to separate the URL per language to understand really what's working well for one language and what's working well for another language, and not have all of the results and number aggregated in one dashboard or in one type of report. So the tools are the same, but the reporting and the search of the volume and stuff, they're different.
That makes sense. Like if you have a distinctive audience, then you might as well get granular with it. Otherwise, you're not going to really understand what's working, what's not. And like on that, what have you seen? Like, are there any trends that you've seen? Like, what converts better with one market, but not with the other, like with the Swiss SEO market or French, German?
That's a good question. I'm reviewing my clients in my head
Yeah.
to check if
Give
I
you
have
a
an
few more
answer.
minutes. Yeah.
I can hardly. I work with clients in different markets and industries. It's difficult to like pinpoint one trend that would be similar for all.
Or like in different niches.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
I
guess
think
at the
we
end of the
we
day,
do.
all testing as well.
Yeah, we do. Basically, we do the same things, but maybe sometimes the biggest difference would be like it would be the same buttons to convert, but something different, like different tone of voice on the buttons. The Swiss Germans tend to go for the website I've worked for, they tend to go with what's called Duzen. It's when you know that in French and in German you have different types of you. You have a formal you, and you have informal you. And at the moment, I see lots of German websites who go for the informal you. And whereas in French, like that's definitely not a trend. We would stay with the more general you. Well, also because in German, you have actually 3 types of you. And one very formal, one very general for several people, and one informal for one person. So they have more choice than us. So you have to keep, typically that wouldn't work for an automatic translations, because then that would, like, if you use DeepL, the text would be translated with the informal you in French, whereas we use the formal one. So you have to choose to change all of the, the grammar and the subjects and stuff. So that's the thing I have seen. Yeah, sort of friendly. Typically, IKEA does that. IKEA is really big on informal speaking and really saying tu, and so Swiss Germans, yeah, they kind of do. I have seen some starting the IKEA way informal, and for us in French, no, it's strange.
It's the same in Swiss, like French areas, like where you are.
Yeah, in French, in French. When I say in French, yeah, I mean in Swiss French, we use like the general you. But I suppose this is all lost in English. This type of things, right?
There's only one you. Yeah, but you could say maybe, but that's it. I mean, what tools have you used for translating content? Are there any ones that you've thought like are not bad?
Yeah, I do lots of localization work, and my clients don't give me translations. They just give me the original text because I can read it. I usually use DeepL, is pretty good. And for like the main thing is that DeepL and the translating tools like Google translating tools, they don't understand ungendered language, and they tend to want to gender everything, whereas it's a big trend at the moment. We really try to not use gender, and DeepL is going to use male and masculine everywhere, like by default. And sometimes also they don't recognize the surname well. And like if you have sort of a biblical name like Jean or Jacques, you know, something, but
Yeah.
if you have a name that is, let's say you come from Albania or something, and you have a name that is not sort of, you know, I don't want to say standards, because this is not standards. This is just, yeah, I'd rather say sort of, yeah, biblical names, you know, the ones that the robots can understand, it's male, female, but otherwise they just don't get it, and they say everyone is a male, and everybody, yeah, everything is male with them. And that's one of the things you have really to be careful of.
Interesting. Yeah. We had someone recently talk about, is it Deep L?
Yeah, deep L.
Like how they used that and connected that with the API, and it worked well for them, but there's still some errors. So
Yeah. And in French speaking Switzerland, in Canadian French, we are really big on ungendered language and using, you know, adapting the text. In French, they are more traditional, and they, like, the language evolves not as rapidly as how we use it. So maybe in France that wouldn't be such an issue, but here, if a brand doesn't use ungendered language or doesn't make the effort to not use the masculine by default everywhere, it looks really old-fashioned, like
and that can be
very
a turn off
old-fashioned.
straight away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for parts of the public, that would be, that's my dad speaking, or I don't know. Yeah.
Which won't be good if you're trying to cater to a younger audience. Yeah.
No, definitely not.
Do you think that's something that you've seen, like, what, in the past 5 years or something?
Probably, yes, in the past 5 years. Now, like the type of language we use, it's not fixed, but there is new typography, and so we are still trying to find what's the good way and what's the way that works best. In German also, they're trying, you know, there's the asterisk, there's different types of points and stuff, and this definitely don't work well using a tool like DeepL. It's all lost.
Wait,
Like
what
the
symbols? You mentioned asterisks. What else? Like,
asterisk, it means the
know
same
that.
as in coding language, like everybody. But there's in French, we use sometimes a middle point, which was used in printed typography. And the middle point, like, this is lost when you use DeepL. The tool doesn't get it. Yeah, and even when you really try to say things like the direction instead of, like, if you say the board of, like, the direction instead of the directors, like DeepL is not going to get it. Most of the time they're going to say the directors masculine basic without
Quite
thinking.
yet hit that next level. Yeah.
Nope.
Maybe in another 5 years or something.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is that with language that don't have gender, like for instance, in English, you don't have gender. He's going to choose masculine gender by default all the time also. So yeah, like these tools, they are really old fashioned.
Well, we're of time as well. I'll see whether anyone else, and I've got like a few team members on the call, whether they have any questions for Isaline. It's a little late.
Yeah, I have a question. What, in terms of hreflang implementation, do you usually like see a difference in implementing for the sitemap or the head HTML?
The head.
Yeah, you prefer that?
Yeah.
How come?
Good question. I think that's how I learned tradition. I think most of the people I've worked with, I worked in a web agency before, and that's how we did it. And to be honest, I haven't questioned it. I've had no reason to question it. So I think you should definitely talk to maybe you've talked to her, Georgie, to Saha Mokansaye. Like, I used to work with her and she's big with Ahref. That's her thing.
Okay, thanks so much.
And
Any other?
I was just gonna say, at the moment, like, are you working in-house or independently, or?
I'm a consultant, so I have my own small company. After I was 4 years in an agency, and then I wanted to try if I could do it on my own. And it was also a great way to have different types of clients and have a different type of portfolio. So it's been nearly 4 years that I'm working for myself.
Enjoying it better?
Both were great.
Yeah.
I might go back to in-house or agency at some point. It's not excluded in the future, but at the moment, I really enjoy what I'm doing. Yeah.
Are you kind of working across all, like, quite a few industries and everything with your clients?
I mostly do, my favorites are B2B in the construction sector. So I'm doing lots of things with the solar panel and building stuff and building material and this type of thing. And I do the automotive industry, but that's B2C, and finance and insurance, of course. It's big in every country, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty big for us as well, the finance, insurance space. We were actually writing about that EV charging stations as well for Australia.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other, like, do you have any other, like, localization tips? I think it's definitely a plus, like when you, like you said, like when you can actually speak, you're fluent in other languages, that's going to make it so much easier.
I think the easiest, if you don't speak the language, first of all, is to prioritize ruthlessly the pages and the content, and focus on the content, the pages that are most important for the clients, and really manage the expectations well, because the clients might see that conversion is different in the languages, and start if possible with locals, but with the selection of pages. I would say that's the most important. Yeah, realistically, it's impossible to do everything at once, but it's good to start with what matters most, service or products that matter most, and the conversion parts and bits.
Do you do, like, much, I don't know, like A/B testing, or just testing in general to see, like, say, like what's going to work for, like, one market but not for another, maybe?
I wish I could do more A/B testing.
Yeah.
I do a little bit on, I do a little bit on the buttons, like, but it's always at the level of the content, what's written on the button, what types of links, and this thing, and it's never at the level of where is the button, for instance, or something like that.
Like, have you seen that, like, even changing, like, the wording in a button, like, has it changed, like, conversion rate quite a bit?
Yes, it does. Like really, if you use verb, it changes a lot. If you're very precise, like, oh, this is for downloading, this is for opening a new page, or you know what's behind this button, that definitely helps. And one of the things that helps also, if there is more budget, is to have a hierarchy in the CTA and be very relevant with the most important CTA that always looks the same across the website. That helps very much. But A/B testing, yeah, that's so fun.
If
I
we
wish
had
I
the
could do
time
more.
and resources. I saw in your bio as well, like you mentioned that you're part of running one of the like the Swiss SEO like community groups as well.
Yes, we started a community with Sarah in 2019, and we have, I don't know, a bit more than 1,000 members now, and that's been really fun to invite. A bit like what you're doing today, you know, invite someone, and we have presentations, and we sometimes do in person. We did an in-person meeting at Google in Zurich in, I think it was August or September. And that was really fun, you know, to get to see the people again in person. And
Yeah, there's something here like James and everyone planning to get something together for Australia and even invite like people from overseas who are keen to come to Sydney for some sort of conference. It's always good, I think, a bit different in person. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. Yeah, so thanks so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. And
Thanks
like super early start as well.
Thanks
It's
for
really-
inviting me. That was fun.
It's really nice to meet you. And like after this, I'll send you the link. And like if you're ever down in Sydney, have you been to Australia before?
Never.
Love to meet
No.
up in person, talk all things SEO and other things as well. Yeah.
So thanks a lot for having me. And well, I don't know if your day is finished, but like have a nice evening and see you in the communities channel.
For sure. Have a good rest of your day. Hopefully a productive start.